Welcome to the Master Your Millions podcast, the show all about your financial potential and leaving a legacy for future generations. Here are your hosts, Jason and Scott Henderson.
Welcome back, everyone. Happy to have you. We have an outstanding guest this week, Dr. J. Who do we have coming on?
Well, Scott, our guest this week, I have not known very long. I met her maybe about a month ago, a few weeks ago, and I was very impressed with what she's doing. And I thought to myself, she needs to be on the podcast. Taylor Ruether is her name, and she is from a very small town in Nebraska. In fact, she didn't tell me the name. All she told me is that there was one stoplight. But she has grown up.
Much.
She's grown up kind of around agriculture her whole life. That's kind of her love. She has animals now, and she's gotten into sales and just has been very successful. And she has started a company called 7 Iron Sales. No, it doesn't have to do with golf, but when we'll get there. Anyway, Taylor, welcome to the podcast. We're so happy to have you.
Thank you. No, I'm very excited to be here. And you're right. I think it was about a month now that we've known each other.
So tell us a little bit, how does a girl from a one stoplight town come from there to where you are now? Just give us a little bit of background of who you are and what's going on.
Yeah, as long as you guys are good with it, I'll kind of start a little bit from the beginning. I think that the way we are raised in our childhood, plays a big role in who we become. So from a very young age, I had kind of a different start to life. So in second grade, my teacher finally stopped reading the books in class. I don't know if you guys remember all the way back to second grade, but the teacher used to read your storybook, and then you would go home and you would practice that story with your parents, and then you come back and read it for your teacher. Well, in second grade, they stopped doing that. And my teachers very quickly learned that I had a photogenic memory, but I couldn't read. And so what I had done is, as the teacher would read the story in class, I would memorize what words were supposed to go with what picture. And then I would go home and flip through the pages and read the story back to my mom. And so when they stopped reading it in class, they figured out that that was not something that I was doing. So they started putting me in some testing and things like that to figure out how my brain works, and kind of figured out that I had a very severe form of dyslexia. And so with that, they went and put me in some specialty classes. They told my mom that I would never learn at the level of other students my age. And so kind of left me there for a while. By fourth grade, we had learned that they hadn't taught me any English or math for 4 years in school, that they had just told my mom that that was something I wasn't capable of doing. My mom decided very quickly and I decided that that wasn't something that I wanted. So we transferred me out of that school, put me in a private school. And I spent the next 2 years doing 2 years of homework with my teachers after school every day to learn how to teach myself how to read and how to think like other students. And I think that kind of started my journey in figuring out that just because somebody puts a label on how something should be or how something should work doesn't necessarily mean that that is the right answer or the only answer to a problem. And so by the time I graduated high school, I graduated with a 4.0 and went straight to college. And so it's just kind of a start for me in figuring out how to problem solve and kind of go from there. So yeah, I had kind of a little different start to my background than your traditional, successful entrepreneurs.
I love that. I love that. It's for the fact that you didn't give up, right? And your mom didn't give up. And that's what it's all about. We're all going to have obstacles. We're all going to have troubles, whether they're one flavor or another, doesn't matter. It's that we go through them and attempt over and over and over again is the important part. So I really love that. Thank you for sharing. So you go to college, and then when did you start into your sales? When did you recognize that you had a sales acumen?
Right. So my dad was the head of a feed and sales grain division for a large cooperative for 19 years. So of course I went to college and swore I would never sell anything and I would never work in agriculture. And you should learn to be careful what you swear in life, because it never goes that way for you. And so I went to college, went for business. So went for agricultural economics. So actually a lot of math and statistics and things like that was a big part of my life. But I also was a part of the Angler Entrepreneurship Program. It was their first year of doing that as a minor. And I have to say that that was really a very big defining factor for me. You know, when you go to school your whole life, your success is based off of your grades, right? You get a good grade, this is what you do. And when I went to the entrepreneurship program, it was all about learning how to define success in a different way. What are you good at? What are your skill sets? What do you like to do? And most importantly, what are you not good at doing? And so we had to learn how to define those for ourselves instead of having our grades define those for ourselves. And so that's kind of how I found sales is kind of a natural fit for me. Talking with people, communicating with people, explaining things was never something that stressed me out. So it was kind of a natural fit for me is, how do I take what I'm good at and make money with it, for a lack of better terms.
So did you go right into sales once you realized that? You started your own company and off the races? Did you do door to door?
Yeah, so no, I actually met my husband, and he lived in an even smaller town than what I grew up in. And so moving out there, it was, okay, this is what I want to do, but what can I do with that living here? And so I started out as a local feed salesman for customers, and had a lot of, how do I put this? You got hired by a manager, but the manager didn't really have time to teach you. You know what I mean? You just kind of had to go figure it out yourself. And so a lot of trial and error, and a lot of things that, as I look back at my career now, I would probably cringe a little bit at what I did. But yeah, just learned how to do that, hit some big milestones, and just grew really fast from there. I was offered a position by a different company to come in and be their territory manager for them. So I was now over dealerships and salespeople within a couple of years of being out of college. So yeah, it just kind of grew like wildfire after that.
That's awesome. And for a lot of people listening, like, you don't realize that that is very typical sales training. Now, I personally have been trained in sales. And for the first week of going door to door, I talked to some, I would say close to 500 to 1,000 people. And they didn't teach me how to close. The moment I did, the very next day, I sold 5 different pest control accounts.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've been in the trenches there with you before.
And I think sometimes when you get started, like, you just like throw all this stuff at people, right? All of a sudden it's like you list every single thing that your product can do. And the fact is, there's maybe one thing out of what you just vomited at people they actually care about, and they may not have even heard it because you just completely just went all over it. So I think it took me a long time to learn how to listen more and respond back, instead of tell somebody what I was selling.
So you started in that as you were married, right? And then down the road, I believe you got into animal pharmaceuticals, correct?
Yeah. So I got married, had my first daughter, which was great. We're very blessed to have her. Had a lot of medical issues that came with that. So it kind of changed the trajectory a little bit of where I was at the time. I was on the road 5 nights a week for the company I worked for, which is great when you are young and single and doing things. But as you want a family, then that becomes a little bit different. And so kind of worked my year of non-compete off for a year, and then got some opportunities to help build some brands. So worked for a company and helped them build. And now I am in the animal pharmaceutical world, which is great. It's a great industry to be in, but definitely has its challenges as well.
Now, I think you were telling me something like you put 5,000 miles on your truck a month. Is that what you were saying?
I do.
That's
yeah.
crazy.
Yep.
That's crazy. A mother of 2 now,
Yep.
And you're putting 5,000 a month on a company truck. That's a
No,
lot.
it's my truck.
Oh, it's your truck. I thought it was a company.
Yeah. No, it's mine. Yeah.
That is a lot of miles. That's a lot of driving, and still be the mom of 2 children. That's amazing. I admire what you're doing. So, but from that, then you've been inspired to start your 7-iron sales. Is my understanding correct?
Yeah.
Why 7-iron? What's the name? Is that the short range golf club, or what is that from?
Yeah. First of all, I know nothing about golf, so we should just get that like off the bat clear. I know nothing about golf. In the agricultural world, we have a saying, you have too many irons in the fire. So we use branding irons to explain where cattle come from, ownership type of things. And if you have too many irons in your fire, what happens is there's not enough heat to equally heat everything up. And so then things start not working like they're supposed to. And so at one point I felt like I was going way too many different directions, like you said, driving 5,000 miles a month and different things like that, and was wanting to kind of rein things in and have a little bit clearer direction. And so I built this business around that same concept for sales, right? We've got all these great concepts of what our product can do and what we can do and how we can sell it, but how do we rein that in to come up with one clear message that people understand, that resonates with people, for a clearer path forward. So that's kind of where it came from. I joke that the number 7 came because my husband and I were having one of those lovely marriage conversations that I'm sure if people are married have had, where he's like, okay, you say you have too many irons in the fire. Like, exactly how many irons do you have? And I was like, at least 7. And so that's just kind of where it came from, I guess.
Kind of stuck. So your 7-iron sales, is that are you a trainer of sales? Are you, because there's fractional CFOs out there, right? And there's fractional CEOs. Are you like a fractional sales manager? Are you a fractional sales trainer? Tell me kind of, I'm a business owner, right? And I know that I need sales, and I find 7 with not spelled out, but 7-iron sales. Tell me a little bit about what you're going to bring to the table and how that's going to help a small budding entrepreneur business.
Yeah. So, the idea behind this was the similar concept to what we started with when Scott and I were talking about your start in sales, right? You don't always have a lot of coaching to start with. And especially for younger companies growing and starting, you really want to focus on hiring your sales staff and building that team out, but they still need somebody that can coach them and work with them. And as a business owner, a lot of times you have enough other things on your plate that that's not something you have time to take on. So that was kind of the idea behind this, is how do we create a position that, we need a salesperson 50% of the time, and 50% of the time we just need somebody that we can call on the phone, bounce ideas off of, help train our sales staff, set budgets, do those big quarterly things that need to be done. And that was kind of the idea behind building a business around being a fractional sales manager for companies.
So I happen to know some other people that know Taylor as far as her sales acumen or her sales ability, and she is very good. She's a good salesperson. She knows her stuff. And so where do you think in the growth model, if you will, a company that, as they're growing, most entrepreneurs, they're solopreneurs, right? They start by themselves, and then they start to build a team. Where do you think the sales guy comes in, or the salesperson, I should say? I mean, where
right?
Is it the accountant you hire first? Is it the tax guy do you hire first? Who do you hire first when you're a solopreneur? Obviously, it's based upon that person's strengths, but let's assume that sales is not one. Where do you think that would fit in the scheme?
Yeah, so I think, if you don't have sales, then you don't have the money to grow your other parts of your teams. So to me, once you have a product established, you know what you want to sell, you know what your messaging is going to be. If sales is not your skill set, then your best asset is to hire someone on your team. I've had a lot of coaches in my life that tell me to focus on your strengths and hire out your weaknesses. So if sales is your strength as an owner, then I've got some programs that are specifically designed to come in and just help you with your messaging, right? How do we make sure that your messaging is clear? How do we make that clear on your website? Are we, saying too much? Is is your customer the hero and you're the solution to that hero's problem? We can work it that way. If sales are not your strength, then let's look at finding you the right salesperson. And then all of those things that you and I communicated about what your messaging is, what your branding is, then we will go about training your salesperson to represent that for you in the field.
Well, I think you answered my question with the sales guy needs to be hired right away.
Yeah. Yeah. Typical salesperson answer, right? Let's give you more than what you asked for.
And I was, and I didn't know. I was looking more for an explanation than a short answer like that. What would you say is the number one mistake most sales people make?
Overpromise, underdeliver. The biggest thing that I have learned is when you're talking to somebody about a product that you're selling, we all know that there's 50,000 things that this product can do. But what we need to figure out is what matters to that person. What problem are they actually having? And then focus on discussing with them about what this product can specifically do for that we know every single time this product is going to fulfill this need. And then when it does this and it does 5 other things for that customer, now we have underpromised and over-delivered. Now they are so in love with this product because not only did it solve this problem, but it also did this 50,000 other things, that they're going to be a salesperson for you in their own right, because they're going to be going out telling everybody about this great buy on this great product that they had.
Love it. Okay. What would you say is so that's the biggest mistake? What's the first skill or something, a skill that a salesperson needs to develop in the beginning of their, I mean, it might be the same answer, I don't know, but at the beginning of their career, what's one of those skills that they need to develop?
I think you need to be able to figure out how to explain the messaging of your product within the first 5 to 10 seconds. Sometimes people don't have and you don't have to have all this amazing background of what your product can be, but you just need to be able to say very clearly, this product solves this. In our generation, everything is instant, right? I want an answer and I Google it. I want this and I want a restaurant review and I Google it. And if you can't give someone an answer in 5 to 10 seconds, they're probably they're going to lose interest and they're going to go somewhere else. So you need to be able to master that explanation in the first 5 to 10 seconds.
So going along with that, there's a saying that 20% of your workers will produce you 80% of the revenue. What sets someone apart from being in that 20%? In sales in general. I mean, you've trained probably hundreds of people by now.
Right. I think the biggest thing is the people who can recognize that customers don't know what they need. So many times we get these people that just tell them all the answers to every problem. And they don't understand that if the customer knew that they needed your solution, they would have went on Google, put it in their Amazon cart, whatever, and they would have bought it. So if I'm trying to sell you something, I'm trying to explain to you or help you understand, pull out of you what your problem is so that I can offer a solution so that we can make a sale. So if I think about that in agriculture terms, I don't know if any of you know farmers at all, but farmers have a great sense of pride and who they are and what they've done. And most of the time, farmers have done the same thing that daddy's dad did for 20 years, and it's worked fine for 20 years. So why would I change it? So when we go in with an innovative product, like the company that I've worked for focuses on non-antibiotic solutions to problems. So when I go in with a problem that's not something that they necessarily understand, I have to help that farmer recognize that they do have a problem, even though it's been the same problem they've had for 20 years and they've lived with it. This is still a problem. And how much better would your life be if we fix that for you? So, I mean, in a nutshell, I think the biggest strength in your 20% is that they can start that conversation and they can pull that need out of somebody, and then they can fill that.
Cool. So you're here. You've how long has 7 Irons been around?
I started in January of last year.
So you've had a little bit of a track record. And how many employees do you have now?
So right now it's just me, just building the business myself. You know, part of the joy in starting this is we talked about at the beginning that I like to find solutions to problems that maybe don't necessarily exist. So the goal in building this business is, this is what I do for a corporate W-2 job. So how do I have this type of career where I live currently? And so that was kind of the desire for building this business, is taking what I do and then building it more like a remote business. So at this point, I'm just working with myself. But my goal is to create some training programs and bring some other people in to teach. But right now it's just me.
Awesome. So not switching the subject, but what has been, you're essentially kind of a fresh entrepreneur in a sense.
Yeah.
So what have been some of those obstacles you've had to overcome being in this small town and being remote?
You know, I think the hardest thing is, you know, living in rural Nebraska, it's very, very much so a W-2 mindset, right? You go to work, you get a job, you start a savings account, you start a 401k, and someday you golf when you retire. For me, you know, I've always said, I don't think that there's only one way to do something. And so for me, starting a business on my own, saying, I think this works, I think I can work with these big companies in Chicago or New York or wherever, and I can do it from Nebraska, is not something that's like wildly accepted. And then you have people who say, well, how do you know if you're going to make money at that? Well, I don't know. I'm learning if I'm going to make money at it. So I think the hardest part has been the culture that I come from, and stepping out of that to stand on my own 2 feet. And then my best advice in that was finding people that are entrepreneurs in this world and asking them advice. I mean, that's pretty much how I wound up on this podcast, because I was bugging Jason about how did you start this and where did you go and how did you, you know, overcome this obstacle. And that's kind of how we got to know each other, was just trying to find other entrepreneurs that live in this world and understand what it takes to step out, and then just kind of growing from there.
That's awesome.
I love what you said. I don't believe there's only one way to do something. And that is exactly coming from your second grade story. Like, you don't believe that there's only one way to learn. You know, you overcame that. I hope you're wildly successful. I really hope that this idea of a fractional sales trainer or a fractional sales force of some sort like that, because I get pitched all the time of a fractional accountant, a fractional CEO, fractional CFO. I've got lots of clients that have fractional CFOs, right? That look over their books and do things that come up with KPIs and say, okay, this is the health of your company, this is what you need to do. But a fractional sales trainer is a great idea. I think that has a real potential. I don't know. What do you think, Scott?
No, I agree.
This is the first year hearing it, right?
I agree. I would say that it takes time when a new idea comes into play. It takes time for people to get used to stuff. So,
you know, I think our culture is changing. You know, it used to be we had a million sales reps, and now if you talk to sales reps in corporate America, their territories are getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Companies are looking at how, you know, raising their bottom line, and what does that look like? So I'm hoping that this is something that will fit in that model as they grow, where I can be beneficial and I can help your company grow without you having to, own everything and have a 401k and all those kinds of things. Because I think that a lot of this, is just being able to be a resource for your sales team.
So in the event someone wanted to hire you as a fractional salesperson or anything, you're gonna put 7-Iron Sales. We'll put all the contact information right in the show notes. You have a website though that someone could go to.
Yep.
The number 7-Iron Sales. Is that how it is? What would they go to?
It's just www.7irons.com. Yep, 7irons.com.
That's plural irons, correct?
Irons, yep.
Right, and we'll put it in the show notes, everyone. It's been really fun to talk to Taylor because you can see, in contrast to some of the other people that we brought on the podcast, she's, would you call her, Scott, fresh or new? Fresh entrepreneur? I think it's brand new.
She's definitely new
compared to some of these guys who have been doing it for decades. And that's the thing is like we bring people on that are complete spectrum. The people who are just trying to manage money and pass it on. People who have passed it on for generations. And then we have the people who are just starting. And that's the beauty of all of it, is we love to see the full cycle. So, I mean, one of the questions I do have for you before we end, we're going to bring you back on 5 years down the line. What goals are you going to hit?
Yeah, I would like to have at least 3 other people that do what I do underneath of me. I would like to have my core businesses that I work with. That's I don't know if anybody's ever asked me that, what my 5-year goal is, but yeah, like I said, I think I'd like to have at least 10 core businesses that I work as a full-time fractional sales manager for. And then ideally I would have 3 underneath of me that have their team they work with as well in the next 5 years.
Any revenue projections? I mean, what we're saying is, tell us this goal, put it out there to the universe, manifest it, if you will. And then we're making the invitation right now. Right. When you hit this, whatever you tell us, when you it could be in 6 months. I mean, you could have 3 people working for you in 6 months. And that being the case, Taylor, I want you to call me, text me, say, Jason, I did it. I went back on your podcast. We're going to come on the podcast. We're going to have a little celebration. We're going to talk about, some of the, when you skinned your knee or some successes, and then really celebrate that you did it. So that's kind of the crux of the question. So throw it out there for us. Throw it down and then make us impressed.
Well, I think, in the 5 years, I mean, this podcast is called Mastering Your Millions, and no one in my family has ever been a millionaire. So I would say, in 5 years, I would like my sales business to be doing $1 million, or have done $1 million in sales is my goal. Like, it just to be able to say that we've hit that threshold, that level, is where I'd like to be. But, talk about throwing down a big gauntlet.
You're going to be there.
Talk about throwing down a gauntlet and then seeing if you can cross it. But I mean, that is the whole name behind your podcast, and that is where I would like to see myself. So,
okay, October 27th, 2020. What is that? 8? Yeah. We expect some kind of communication
before.
Yeah, you should not ask a dyslexic girl to do math in her head. That's not. we already described that.
Awesome. Well, any final words?
I just want to.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Taylor. I was going to ask you one more question, but go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to thank you guys for your time and what you guys are doing and looking at the full spectrum of entrepreneurs, not just the guys that have done it, but everybody that's coming along. So I just wanted to thank you guys for your time today.
Oh, thank you. One other thing that sometimes we ask, and this is not going to be very applicable to you, is we ask people, in the event you could go back to your 19-year-old self or your 20-year-old self and give them some advice. That's only 3 years ago for you.
Yeah, very funny. I wish.
What lessons have you learned? I mean, you've hit the pavement. You really have. You put a lot of miles on your truck. You've been in front of a lot of people. You've had a lot of no's, and you've still gone through that. What is some advice that you would give to someone that's, maybe fresh out of college or coming out of high school? Or even someone that's struggling in school? I mean, you had a real battle in school. Well, just some parting advice that you'd give to someone that you cared about.
I think everybody is excellent at something, whether that's talking, problem solving, math, accountant, whatever your skill set is, everybody is a master at something. And the sooner you learn what you're good at, the sooner you can start finding that confidence in where you want to make your money, if that makes sense. For me, I spent a lot of time in my life having people tell me I would never be good at something. And now I have a lot of people in my life, people with millions that tell me I'm really good at sales. And it's still hard for me to not feel a little bit like an imposter, so to speak. So I think you need to learn what you are good at, and so you can stand in your own confidence on it, I think.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Well, again, we are so thrilled for you. And I'm excited to see this goal. I think you'll hit it faster than you think.
I hope so.
Well, again, guys, if you would like to connect with Taylor, we will put everything in the show notes down below. If you like this episode, please leave us a review. You have no idea how much it helps us out, and hit that subscribe button. And remember that mastering your millions all starts with your mind and your team. Make sure they are the best.
Thanks for listening to Master Your Millions with Jason and Scott Henderson. Check the show notes for any links or contact information about today's guest. Make sure to follow the show so you don't miss any future episodes.